I'm Jayson Jorgensen. It is once again time for Husker Chat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. We are joined by Sean Callahan with Husker Online as we'll talk about the Huskers trying for a nice reset coming off of the bye week. Sean, if there ever was a team that needed a bye, it was certainly Nebraska. How do you think they have managed this, and what can we really expect on Saturday night in the game against Indiana?
Yeah, it's obviously been a really long month of the season to start things out. You had Ireland, you had 2 coaches get fired, you have 33 new players on this roster. I mean, there's just been a lot of influx, 5 new coaches brought into the staff. And so, yeah, I think the time of the bye has been great just to kind of reset everything. And Bill Busch has come in as the new defensive coordinator. I think he's done his best to try to simplify more what they do, which I know is easier said than done. But the reality is Nebraska's defense was having a hard time getting lined up and set up before the play, and it caused a lot of problems. And they're one of the worst defenses right now in college football statistically, so they can really only go up from here at this point. And I know Bill Busch has a tough job ahead of him, but this game against Indiana, I think it presents a lot of matchup challenges. Indiana wants to run plays. Their quarterback, Connor Bazalek, he has had 213 dropbacks, which leads the country. They run, over 80, 90 plays a game in most Saturdays. Last week in a loss, they ran 104 plays. They typically play close to 4-hour football games. So I think from a defensive standpoint, Nebraska has their work cut out of them. But at the same time, they need to build an offensive game plan that helps Nebraska in this game.
You mentioned Indiana going quick. How does this work for the Huskers? You mentioned the problems Nebraska's had getting set and getting lined up. I would think that's really got to put a stress on this infrastructure, this coaching staff, just to get the calls in time to run the right play against Indiana.
I think this whole back and forth chess game that Shenander used to try to play, they're done doing that. I think they're going to have a call and they're going to stick with it. They're not going to try to, you change, we change that game, because a lot of times they just weren't ready to go. And I think opposing teams were using that against Nebraska, trying to kind of confuse them with pre-snap checks, reads, substitutions. And it just led to a defense that was having a hard time getting set up. Now, the question is, will it make a difference? Can Nebraska physically get it done? Their back 7 of the defense has not been great. The linebackers, the safeties. What changes can they have to make those guys better football players still remains the question.
Today at Husker Chat, we're joined by Sean Callahan with Husker Online as Nebraska gets set for their matchup against Indiana this weekend. Sean, I know a lot of people were looking towards the new depth chart that came out this week. There weren't a lot of changes. What's kind of your read and take on that?
Yeah, the biggest thing was Kevin Williams not listed. He started left guard the week before against Oklahoma. He's out with an ankle injury. He had surgery. Ethan Piper will get an opportunity to be a starter again. He started last year and then got hurt and hasn't been a starter since, but he started in 2020. So Ethan Piper will get a new opportunity at left guard this week. Obviously Turner Corcoran's at left tackle. Ernest Hausman not listed on the depth chart, but he'll continue to play a lot of special teams. Then we saw some younger names appear on that depth chart. Omar Brown could play at nickel. Malcolm Harstug, a freshman out of Mississippi. Jalen Gold, a freshman safety out of New Jersey. I think if we see any new younger guys play, it's going to be on that back end of the defense, probably in the secondary.
Anything really concrete really developed here lately on the coaching search? I know there's like a 1,000 thoughts on where this goes and who might be interested and who might Nebraska target.
Yeah, it's going to be a long 2 months, Jason. This is a lot of the guys we're talking about are sitting head coaches. And when you're a sitting head coach, you're not going to take a job or talk to another school. But I think Lance Leipold's name, Dave Aranda's name, the Kansas head coach, the Baylor head coach. I think Dave Doran at North Carolina State. There's a lot of names out there. Bill O'Brien at Alabama continues to get a lot of steam. Early on, you heard Mark Stoops' name, but man, he's got Kentucky in the top 10 right now. They're playing really good football. So I think you've got to kind of continue to look at this week by week, but there is a search firm. I'm sure Trev is going to utilize that. They're going to have their candidate list and kind of really try to size this thing up. But there's not a lot you can do right now other than just evaluate candidates.
And how about the game on Saturday night? Do you think this sellout streak continues? And are you surprised that Nebraska is actually a favorite in this game against Indiana? They're 3-1. The Huskers really haven't shown us much in the first month of the year.
Two great questions there, Jason, because, I think Nebraska being a favorite caught a lot of people by surprise. Indiana's 3-1. They beat Illinois, and they beat a pretty good Western Kentucky team. I mean, Western Kentucky beat Florida International like 73-0 on Saturday. So that's not a bad win they had a couple of weeks ago. And they played Cincinnati tough. Cincinnati doesn't lose at home, and they played them in Cincinnati. So that was not an ideal matchup, but they ran 104 plays in a loss. And you've been around a lot of games, Jason. Very often you don't see a team run 104 plays and lose. So there's a lot about this game, but to get to your next question on the sellout streak, I think it will happen. I think they'll sell the tickets, and there's 4 home games left. They're not home again until the end of October. There's a little 4-week break between home games here after this game. So there will be time. And I think it's to the point now, can they survive this 4 games? Then they'll get kind of that new coach bump next year. And then obviously they're going to start tearing apart the stadium after that. So this thing's got a chance, I think, to get to 400. And that's really remarkable. And I know people kind of scoff at the streak because Nebraska's had to get creative here in the last 2 years. Really the last 10 years, they've shrunk the stadium. The stadium used to have announced attendance of close to 92,000 at one point, and now we're looking at 87,000 as an announced attendance. Scan ticket numbers are more in the 70s, low 70s, high 60s. So there's a lot of things about the streak, I think, that raise questions, but it's still remarkable that Nebraska has made it to this point because there's not a lot of teams selling out anymore.
All they need to do is win.
Just win.
Winning would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it?
Yeah, wins make everyone's life a lot easier. It makes these Husker chats a lot easier.
That's for sure. Sean, as always, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jason.
That was Sean Callahan with Husker Online, joining us for our Husker Chat series. Once again, it's brought to you by Acres Equipment. We are here every week. I'm Jayson Jorgensen.